Off a day. Thank you everyone for being here today. The Committee on Health, Tourism, Historic Preservation, Land and Justice is now called to order. Today is Monday, June 10. The time is about 1:05 p.m. Notices for this public hearing were disseminated via email to all senators and all main media broadcasting outlets on May 31 and again on June 7, 2019. The notice was also published in the Guam Daily Post on June 3rd and June 6th. The agenda items, there are two. One is Bill number 76-35, introduced by Senator Joe San Agustin, an act to correct the property boundary of University of Guam, lot number 2517-17, to ensure that all university-owned structures are located within the boundaries of the University of Guam, lot number 2517-17. The second item on the agenda is Bill number 72-35, introduced by Senator Amanda Shelton, an act to amend Section 3112B of Chapter 3, Title 7, Guam Code Annotated, to add a new Section 3113 of Chapter 3, Title 7, Guam Code Annotated, establishing the Working Interdisciplinary Network of Guardian Stakeholders, or WINGs, relative to the Office of the Public Guardian. I'd like to thank my colleagues for attending this afternoon's hearing. Beginning with our Vice Speaker, Senator Talina Nelson, Senator Joe San Agustin, Senator Amanda Shelton, and Senator Luis Borja Muña, sorry. Thank you for being here today. Thank you all. So we're going to start with Bill number 76-35, COR, and I recognize there are several members from the University of Guam here, and so thank you for being here today. We've been told that there will also be testimony by the Chamorro Land Trust Commission, but the director was not feeling well at the last minute, so they're going to send that in writing. So we have a list of people who are signed up to testify. But before we hear from the panel, I'd like to invite Senator San Agustin to introduce the bill.
Buenas and Madam Chair, for this opportunity to briefly present this bill and for your leadership in hearing this bill today. Bill 76-35 COR is an act to correct the property boundary of University of Guam, lot number 2517-17, to ensure that all university-owned structures are located within the boundaries of the University of Guam, lot number 2517. In 1985, lot 25-17, the municipality of Vergara was granted the government of Guam and was subsequently used by the Department of Commerce to establish the Guam Agriculture Development and Training Center for the purpose of developing an agricultural industry in Guam, on Guam. Through the growth of the hatchery, the Guam Agriculture Development and Training Center, known as GADTC, built various structures, including the larva room, a spawning Quonset, a fish tank, and a freshwater cistern, all of which are either full or partial concrete structures. These were built on government Guam property. In 2002, with Public Law 26-36, El Estatuto Guam transferred this property and the administrative and operation control from the Department of Commerce to the University of Guam. The effect of this transfer caused the boundary lines to indicate some of the structures to now be located on lands not originally deeded to the government of Guam in 1985, but still on government Guam lands. For 18 years now, the University of Guam has been attempting to correct the jurisdictional land issues since the property boundary for the University of Guam, lot 2517-17, does not include critical structures to the operation of the U.S. UOG fish hatchery. Therefore, it's the intent of Bill 76-35 to make whole the parcel which these critical UOG fish hatchery structures stand, and then the easternmost lot boundary to be extended to include all UOG physical structures, correcting the error made in the transfer of this hatchery, its land, infrastructure, and assets to the University of Guam. Sidus Masi, Madam Chair.
Sidus Masi, Senator San Agustin. If I could now call up Mr. Liu Dean, Vice President Anita Borja Enriquez, and Mr. Joe Borja, Director of the Department of Land Management. There are others who have signed up in support but did not indicate that they would be giving testimony. So thank you also for being here. Dean, you're signed up first, if you'd like to proceed.
Madam Chair, if it's all right, I would like to ask the acting president of the university to speak before me.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Ms. Acting President, please proceed.
Honorable Chair Terlaje and members of the 35th Guam Legislature, buenas din hafade, guaho si anitan Bora Enriquez, who representa ginin unubet sidet guahan, ginin as acting president and senior vice president for academic and student affairs. The University of Guam supports Bill 76-35 COR, which resolves a longstanding boundary issue involving 1.5 acres of Chamorro Trust land, which has been in use as part of the Guam Aquaculture Development and Training Center, otherwise known as GADTC operations since the mid-1980s, and has the following history. A fish hatchery located on lot number 2517-17 in Fadian, Manila, was transferred to the Department of Commerce in 1985. The Department of Commerce constructed permanent structures on and across the boundary line of lot number 2517-17 and onto land which subsequently became CLTC land. In 2001, Public Law 26-35 transferred the Guam Aquaculture Development and Training Center to the University of Guam, including all property and structures, inclusive of those structures on and across the boundary of 2517-17. One of Governor Lourdes A. Leon Guerrero's initiatives is to develop Guam's aquaculture industry, and the University of Guam is working to do its part to increase aquaculture production on island via the Guam Aquaculture Training and Development Center. The GADTC is located off Route 15 in Manila and is home to the university's biosecure facility that houses its basic and applied research in aquaculture. It includes the development of high-health, specific pathogen-free shrimp, post-larvae, and brood stock. The GADTC costs the university approximately $250,000 per year to operate and is not a revenue-generating facility. Bill 76-35 COR will resolve the GADTC boundary issue, allow the university to increase aquaculture production, diversify revenue streams, and support the governor's vision of developing a robust aquaculture industry. The University of Guam supports Bill 76-35 COR, which will change the easternmost boundary of the GADTC lot number 2517-17 as indicated in the bill and as illustrated in the image which is provided in the written testimony. The university seeks a harmonious resolution to the boundary issue and proposes an intensive 3-month series of farming workshops for clients of the Chamorro Land Trust as outlined in the attached document titled University of Guam and Chamorro Land Trust Agriculture Workshop Series Proposal. The farming workshops will be offered as in-kind services to the CLTC clients upon the passage of Bill 76-35 COR. We look forward to your support of this bill and the development of Guam's fledgling aquaculture industry. Sincerely, on behalf of President Thomas W. Christ. Sijus Masi.
Sijus Masi. Dean, Dean?
Buenas hafade. Senators. My name is Lee Yu Dean. I'm the Dean of the College of Natural and Applied Sciences. As Dean of the College of Natural and Applied Sciences at the University of Guam, I seek your support of Bill 7635. The Guam Aquaculture Development and Training Center, also known as GADTC, is a tropical aquaculture facility currently operated under the auspices of the College of Natural and Applied Sciences of the University of Guam. The facility began as a Guam Aquaculture Research Institute in the early 1970s, but the facility was abandoned in the early 1980s. In 1986, the government of Guam assumed control in lieu of taxes, and GADTC was administered by the Department of Commerce until 2001, at which time it was transferred to the University of Guam. Since then, UOG CNAS faculty have obtained multiple grants to develop a specific pathogen-free shrimp culture on Guam. In the year 2005, we established 2 years of health monitoring history, minimum requirement to qualify as a SPF shrimp facility, a designation in which GADTC holds today. In the year 2007, UOG hired an aquaculture scientist, Dr. Wei Gong Jian, whose work further strengthened broodstock genetic lines. These lines contain a significant amount of genetic diversity while performing well in growth out trials. GADTC has three primary assets: the site, the physical plant, and the biological material. It is also isolated from biosecurity threats, yet has ready access to local and Asian markets. GADTC, combined with the university's research experience, provide the catalyst to develop an aquaculture industry for Guam. Bill 76-35 provides the university with legal ownership of all the property that was transferred back in 2001. It has the potential, GDTC has potential, and passage of Bill 7635 will enable the university to fully realize the potential by resolving this long-standing boundary issue. It is my estimate that Bill 7635 is a turning point for GADTC. Passage of Bill 7635 will enable the university to develop an aquaculture industry. If we fail to garner enough support, we must seriously look at closing down the operation and foregoing all research efforts realized to date. The status quo is not a desirable option for this wonderful facility. I seek your support in this important initiative. Si Jus Masi.
Si Jus Masi. Mr. Borja?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee, and senators. The Department of Land Management supports the intent of Bill 76-35 with the following comments. Relative to Section 2, lot correction. This description does not meet the required legal and technical description to convey real property. Although we know that the intent is to convey property inland, the coordinates as is in the bill could mean that the property is situated in the middle of the ocean, as there is no basis or datum for these coordinates. The description instead should rely on an accepted survey map approved and recorded at the Department of Land Management as a result of a proper land survey completed by a Guam licensed professional land surveyor. Joseph M. Borja, Acting Director. The testimony is also signed by the Chief of Cadastry at the Department of Land Management, Paul Santos, Registered Land Surveyor number 68, since the requested correction is actually a technical correction.
Thank you, Mr. Borja. Mr. Borja, if I may just ask you, your testimony speaks about kind of a technical correction that should be based on a survey. So there has been no adequate survey done yet?
I believe that there are some surveys done, but the surveys have not been approved or recorded at the Department of Land Management.
All right, so because I've seen several in relation to this bill and the previous bill in the last term that was identical to this bill. But yeah, I wasn't sure about which of those maps was proposed, because they have all different numbering schemes, and so okay.
The information provided in the bill as introduced, giving the coordinates, it's not an adequate legal description or technical description to convey property. The department, however, supports the intent of the bill.
All right. Do you see the picture that was provided in the president's testimony from the University of Guam? Does that look accurate to you?
Well, accurate in the sense that I guess that's what they want to do, but you know, if you're asking me if it's accurate for surveying purposes, of course it's not. It's basically a concept description, not correct meets and bounds points and points of beginning, and as such as would be required in an approved and recorded map.
All right, but do you agree with that area that's designated unusable 35-foot seashore reserve? Is that the blue?
I see the blue on it, but I'm not sure, if it's 35 feet, could be more, could be less. It's basically a sketch on it.
Yeah, it's just a sketch. All right. I appreciate that. If I could ask, I took one of the maps. Did you have maps for the committee that you wanted to discuss, or?
Well, I have maps that may help the committee realize the area. My apologies, we don't have it that we can show up on the screen there, but we do have maps that are available, and
We put one of those up. If I could ask audio to put it up on there it is. Maybe, so that white line is supposed to be dotted, and it doesn't show as dotted to my vision right now, but so maybe if you could discuss it, Mr. Borja.
well, the line that goes, that long line that goes vertical up and down there, that is the original property line for lot 54-12, the one that kind of cuts across the a building there. Yes, that's
Okay.
that's a good one, yeah. So the line that goes there that crosses actually over the word or the letter L, that's the original property line between lot 5412 and lot 2517. The yellow line to the right of that vertical line, that long vertical line, is the area that the University of Guam is indicating as the correction of the boundary for the hatchery. The other points to the left of that long vertical line, the meandering line to the upper left portion of the drawing there, the graphic, is the access easement to the property, and the other yellow lines there are the boundary lines of the hatchery. The squiggly lines, if I might say that word, are actually topographical lines. The red ones on the top right-hand corner indicates a very steep drop. The closer the lines are together, the steeper the drop is, and that area of the property is actually a cliff line. And then you have some areas there where there vacant or no lines in the middle. Those are basically flat level areas. So what you're looking at is actually a topographical map with the boundary lines in yellow and the proposed boundary line adjustment on the right side of the property, or the eastern side of the property.
Thank you. And you had said that the access to this property currently comes down the left of the screen.
That's correct.
All right. So your predecessor at the Department of Land Management, the former director, in a prior bill had submitted testimony saying that, lastly, the matter of correcting the encroachment by extraneously enlarging the existing lot should be a secondary concern. Easement access to this property is only identified as temporary on the survey map and specifies that a 40-foot easement to be provided when lot 2517-R17 is developed. The University of Guam should continue its dialogue with the Office of the Attorney General to legally resolve the easement access to lot 2517-17. Otherwise, any desired change to the lot to correct an identified encroachment may be futile if the lot is not served by a permanently dedicated and recorded right-of-way. Could we have the map up again, please? Where is the lot 2517-R17?
That's where the hatchery is. That's it's the hatchery is part of a very big lot. It doesn't show on that map, but that lot goes all the way up to the top of the cliff line.
But the hatchery is located in lot 2517-17.
That's correct.
So where's 2517-R17?
To the northwest of the hatchery.
Where's that on this picture?
Right where the easement is.
Going up to the top of the screen on the left?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, like a bluish line.
Yes, I have problems with my eyesight. Yeah, bluish line with the white
All right.
circles, right?
So who
yeah.
owns that property, Mr. Borja?
That property is originally was owned by Paris Development Incorporated, which actually granted the easement.
Paris Development.
Paris Development. It's a different owner now, but the easement was originally granted by the original owner, Paris Development Inc. in
All right. And so,
1985.
Are you aware of any formal, in your opinion, is this easement resolved?
Well, the grant of easement reads, grantor expressly reserves to itself, its successor, and assigns the right to relocate the existing temporary access, subject, however, to the approval of grantee, which approval shall not be unreasonably held. So there is an easement, but is it a permanent easement in that location? Not according to the grant of easement, but the topography of the property basically indicates that that's where the easement should be, because there's almost really no other easement to be granted in that area because of the topography of the property.
Could you please clarify then for us and submit to the committee as soon as you can who the owners of these properties are that are adjacent to the property where the current hatchery lies and the property that Chamorro Land Trust property that we are transferring by this bill, and also whether the easement is formally complete and there's not an issue for us to look at all.
Yes, I can do that. There are only two neighbors to the hatchery, which is the Chamorro Land Trust from the cliff on up and lot 2517 R17 new. So
does that mean on the left of the yellow lines,
yes,
on the left of the screen, that's the same owner as the easement up top?
Well, the easement on the top has already been granted, has already been acquired.
The surrounding
on
property
the top
up top.
Right, yeah.
Same?
It's already been granted.
Same owner?
No.
So there are three adjacent landowners.
Two, and but the one on top, if you're saying the easement, yes, there's more landowners than the two, but the hatchery facility itself only has two neighbors. The easement does, however, service other people, but the easement on the top part, that has already been acquired. There's no question on that easement on the top part.
What do you mean the top part?
I can't see it on the map, but coming from Route 15.
Okay, that one is formal.
That's formal. That's
right.
acquired already. That's
Mr. Borja, is this easement that's shown on this map? Does it currently use? I mean, is this the only easement that can access the Chamorro Land Trust property that might be transferred? It doesn't. I don't see any other easements on the right side of the screen here. That's why.
yeah. The Chamorro Land Trust property is almost basically inaccessible by the Chamorro Land Trust because where the hatchery is below the cliff, and the only access to that part of the Chamorro Land Trust property would be over the cliff.
Is it possible to extend that easement so that they would be able to access their property beyond the hatchery?
Not according to the grant of easement, because the grant of easement says this easement is for the benefit of.
Well, no, that's what let me
yeah.
rephrase that, Mr. Boris. So, of course, that grant is done, but the property now is either owned by, on the right side, within the yellow lines, and right above the yellow lines on the right side of the screen, is currently owned by Chamorro Land Trust, correct?
That's correct.
So-
Top of the cliff and bottom of the cliff.
Right. So I'm asking, can we connect the Chamorro Land Trust that's going to be remaining here to the access? That's one question. If you could give us a formal answer, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, you could, provided the owner of the lot where the hatchery is, agrees to it. It would have to be through the hatchery lot.
All right. Well, I want you to explore the possibilities of that, because otherwise it seems that they would be forever cut off for sure on this side. All right, I have a couple more questions if I may.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
very simple. Can they put the screen back on? As we're looking at the screen on the right side with the cliff line, because the way the map is drawn up, those are all cliff. Am I correct, Joe?
Right where you see those lines that are really close together, beginning from the red.
That's correct?
Yes,
That's a cliff.
that's the cliff line, and then, of course, below it is...
Little
below
bit
the
of flat,
cliff.
and then it goes cliff again, right?
Yes, it goes...
And
cliff.
what's the dimension of that property? Are we saying then that if we say that that's Chamorro Land Trust property, Chamorro Land Trust property is looking at issuing a lease agreement so folks can go in there and live by the cliff?
I'm not sure.
I'm just curious because there seems to be a debate around the hatchery, and I know how the topo map is written, because they're all identifying that everything's pretty much a cliff surrounding the hatchery. Is that realistic to say that even if you gave them easement, they're going to be able to?
Well, that's what
Have
we're
at least-
asking, Mr. Senator San
Well, and
Augustine.
and
We're
that's why I
asking
wanna
for
ask
them
Joe.
to give us an assessment on that, because they're not all cliff property, obviously, or the hatchery would not be able to be built there. So there are other spaces like that on this site that we're asking if they are, I'm presuming they're usable, we don't know. But if they are, if they're going to be able to be accessed.
Okay, Madam
If
Chair.
I could ask the dean or the president, there's nothing right now that's impeding your use of these facilities, although the boundaries are in dispute. But I guess I wanted to know, because the bill doesn't specify and the testimony doesn't specify, what are the potential uses of this property? Are you going to lease it out to someone else and that's why they need it to be formal? Or is it possible, I mean, are they going to build on these areas on the cliff? That's another. Do you have a proposed plan or a proposed lease or anything that goes along with this?
Senator, maybe I can answer a couple of your concerns. We currently have an RFP that we are looking for a public-private partnership for the hatchery. As stated in my testimony, we have had this parcel for many, many years, and the big issue has been the infrastructure. It's really been deteriorating over the last 15 to 20 years. And we haven't had enough financial support through the university or through GovGuam to bring it up to the capability that we believe it should be. So under my administration, one of the things that I've tried to do is get a public-private partnership, somebody who would be able to come in with the resources to take really a perfect setting on Guam to be able to revitalize this current property. So very briefly, to answer your question, yes, there is an RFP went out. The committee sat and reviewed the RFP, the individuals that submitted for the proposal. They selected a particular company. However, because of some of the land use issues, we have not gone into true negotiations with this particular company at this point in time. And the issue, of course, is that one line that cuts through the facility. Absolutely, it would be difficult if we were just to stop at that point. Somebody would then have to relocate that building and especially that cistern, which is a really important aspect. We've kind of controlled this piece of property, taking over as you've heard from Commerce. So it's never really been an issue until we started negotiating this particular point.
All right, so you intend to keep the facilities that are there, not to...
Correct.
All right, and is there... I see that the new boundary line will go... I'm not sure how many feet that is, but
Right.
It goes significantly beyond the building, and I guess I'm just curious why that is.
Sure. I think that one of the reasons is that there is listen, the potential for increasing the hatchery's ability to generate funds. It's not, even though it looks like a very large parcel, one of the aspects would be, if a private company was able to come in there, would be to expand even further than what the current footprint is. So it would allow them perhaps to build other areas on that parcel, and I believe that's why we wanted to go a little bit further than what that current building structure is. If that answers your question.
And that's incorporated in the current RFP and expansion?
No, ma'am. No.
What about, does the current RFP allow for mineral extraction on this property?
No, ma'am.
When this bill was introduced before, there was testimony that from the Chamorro Land Trust, so we're waiting for their new testimony, but that they had wanted fair market value to be paid. Is the university willing to do that, if that's their concern?
I can answer that, or I could ask Kathleen Moore Linda to come up here as well, but there's a couple of issues. One of the things that we have tried to negotiate, be more than willing to do, would, instead of actually a turning over of financial support for that piece of property, would be to give in-kind service. As you know, the College of Natural and Applied Sciences has a very large outreach and extension program that deals with all kinds of issues, and hence we were in agreement with the Chamorro Land Trust to say we'd be happy to do X amount of workshops for not only aquaculture but agriculture in general, to help substitute the value of that land for basically for services.
Are you saying you are in agreement with them? That's
That we'd be more than willing to yes, absolutely.
or that's proposed?
Well, that's proposed.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you. I'm going to open up to Senator San Augustine. Any questions? Senator Nelson, Vice Speaker Nelson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'd like to thank you for holding this public hearing. We addressed the exact same bill, perhaps similar, but nothing much has changed from it from last term. And perhaps we have a new UOG president, but the staff that's sitting there at the head are the same people. And we specifically asked them for a survey and accurate annotation of the property desired to be transferred over to the University of Guam's holdings. And now we're here again for probably like the third time, because we've had numerous hearings, and we're still discussing the lot number 2517-17 in reference to coordinates.
Can
And
sorry, excuse me.
Yeah,
Go
let
ahead,
me
please.
just finish what
Yes,
I'm
ma'am,
saying.
sure,
after
sorry.
you do. So, you know, I'm a little bit curious of this approach again, because how do you, if I would like to purchase a piece of property, Mr. Borja, how would I be able to purchase that said piece of property? Can you just walk us through the details of purchasing a piece of property that has not been developed, and how would I go about that? Say I want to buy the property from you.
I guess it's as basic as
What are the steps?
buyer beware. The first thing you would do would be to run a title check
Okay.
to make sure that the person selling you the property is the actual owner.
Okay.
And then right after that is show me a map, a recorded, approved map of the property that you're looking at purchasing it.
Okay.
But, you know, there have been purchases without either of those.
Right.
Yeah.
But we're acting in the best interest of the government, so it's important that we do our due diligence, no? And so if we do the PTR, right? and we make sure that whoever owns the property, it's rightfully theirs, so that we don't get into this probate issue or some kind of court issue
Correct.
that someone's trying to sell us land, that doesn't belong to them. And then we go out and we ensure that this is the property that's assigned, that is recorded and surveyed.
Right.
And it shows the lot description, the exact size of the lot, the square meters of the lot, the location of the lot. And usually that's, if I want to double check the accuracy, I would hire my own surveyor. The person that's interested in buying would would hire their own surveyor to ensure that these are the boundaries of the said lot. And so I'm a little bit curious why we're still using coordinates in reference to the lot.
And that was stated in my testimony. In the testimony that I stated, it was actually developed by our chief of cadastry, who's a registered land surveyor, saying that the coordinates provided in that bill are not adequate to effectively legally transfer property.
Right.
A little bit of history,
Can you
though.
say that again? Can you say that one more time, what you just said?
The coordinates in the bill, as introduced, is not an adequate legal description
Of the property
of the
desired.
property to transfer it legally.
So the coordinates that we have in this bill,
In the bill.
that we're trying to reference a property is not an accurate legal description of the property that is desired.
The description does not meet the required legal and technical description to convey real property.
So how do we meet the required legal description to display real property?
An accepted survey map approved and recorded at the Department of Land Management as a result of a proper land survey completed by a Guam licensed professional land surveyor. Developing a map, recording a map, and approving a map, recording it, does not transfer the ownership of the property.
Right.
Maps do not transfer ownership
Right.
of the property.
It's the title, the deed title.
The deed, the
The
transfer
deed.
document, yes.
Right. So why are we accepting this as a body? Why are we accepting this and not something? What did you say again that you described it as? Why are we accepting something that is not a valid legal determination for property?
This
But
description,
we're accepting.
this description does not meet the required legal and technical description to convey real property by using those coordinates. It's not like.
So that's all I have, Madam Chair, and I hopefully that was the biggest thing. And Dr. Udine, you were rather very concise in your. Thank you, Mr. Borja. Thank you.
Senator, if I might add, I think the other thing that can be looked at relative to your question about ownership of the property, of the property,
Yes.
which is lot 5412. I mean, there's no disputing that the hatchery owns the lot that they're own.
Right.
The property that they're seeking to expand into or correct the boundary is
Right.
lot 5412.
Right.
5412 has been registered. There was a decree establishing title in 1977.
Okay.
And the lot 5412, the basic lot, is actually 98.7 acres.
Okay.
Under Public Law 2218, 15 acres were reserved for the Guam Power Authority to consolidate operations, which is their existing facility there. 2 acres were reserved for the Guam Energy Office to build an energy house. That energy house was subsequently built in the DPW parking lot. What was actually transferred to the land trust under document 503740, out of that 98 acres, the land trust doesn't own all of that. The land trust was given under that transfer document 61.7 acres. So 37 acres of that original lot did not go to the land trust. Out of the 37 acres, 15 went to GPA to consolidate operations. 2 acres went to the GEO, but they may not need it anymore because they built the facility over there at the DPW parking lot. The reason why they did not build their
Facility.
energy house there was at the time that the federal funds became available to build the energy house, there was no infrastructure in the area. When GPA and GWA consolidated their operations and went there, they brought along the infrastructure, the utilities, water and power for that area.
Okay.
Now,
What happened to the other 13 acres then?
well, the other 13 acres should actually be in the land trust
Okay.
by operation of law, because in the transfer document or the reservation document, Public Law 2218, the legislature gave themselves a safety valve. For these lands reserved, the legislature could, I'm reading from the law, upon direction by statute from the legislature, the commission shall release to the department, meaning the Department of Land Management, any unleased available land designated for a public purpose. Such land will no longer be considered to be Chamorro homelands. In another section of that Public Law 2218, it says, all government lands excluding 1, all lands dedicated to a specific public use by law, and 2, all lands reserved in accordance with Section 60105 of this title, which reservations are submitted to and concurred by the legislature within 90 days of the enactment of this chapter are hereby designated as available lands. So government agencies were required to do 2 things. When these properties were reserved, they were required to do 2 things. Number 1, I believe within 2 years to develop a conceptual plan as to what they were going to use that property for, the ones that they reserve. And within 3 or 4 years, I believe, it's in the law, they were supposed to identify the funding to do that thing that they were supposed to do. None of the government agencies did that. Yeah, the first one that did it was GPA and GWA, because a lot of those properties in that reserve lands list didn't have infrastructure. Some of them didn't even have access.
Okay.
So that's kind of like the story of Lot 5412.
So now that we're addressing this piece of legislation, we still don't have the legal valid description for this said property.
Yes, you do now, because when GPA came in,
Well, what
they
did you
surveyed
just-
their property.
What did you just read earlier off of your testimony? Then
This
so
one was,
it's kind of like contradicting itself, or am I not following what you're saying?
on which statement?
The statement that you read earlier, that this piece of legislation that we have in front of us, that there's no valid legal determination by the way we explain it as in coordinates of the said property.
No, it's those coordinates is intended to describe the
Right, it's just a
proposed area
description, but it's not a valid.
it's not
legal
a legal or
determination.
technical description, right?
Right.
The property, though, Lot 5412.
Absolutely, it exists. There's no question it exists.
And
but
the boundaries have been set
Right.
by an approved and
so why don't we
recorded
have a
map.
valid legal determination? Why are we using this coordinate reference?
I don't know.
Yeah, that's the same thing I've been asking.
Yeah.
We were hoping to get, to see if we could push this bill on the floor, but University of Guam, last term, didn't give us the valid legal determination.
Yeah, that's,
And so, so we're back at square one again. I don't know if because we think we have a majority of new senators and not all of us are
No,
tracking
ma'am.
these
No.
things.
No, ma'am.
So I just kind of,
May
it's
I-
almost like,
Ca-
you know, Dr. Udine.
Madam
can I-
Senator, can I just interject?
And
Yes.
I'm a little bit, you know, this statement, if we fail to garner enough support, then we must seriously look at closing down the operation and foregoing all the research efforts realized to date. Status quo is not a desirable option for GADTC. We're not asking you to remain status quo.
Right.
We've been asking for a valid legal determination.
And we have, and I'm sorry that you don't have it, but I have it in front of me. When we listened to what you had to say when we were last here, even a year or so ago, in front of me is a detailed survey of that piece of property. It might not have been submitted yet to the Land Commission, but I have in front of me the
So
actual, yes,
We need to submit that so that we
It's
can
filed
move
at-
this bill forward, so we can put it in as a
Yes.
substituted copy of the bill.
yes, ma'am. It's
Thank
right
you,
here.
Dr. Udine.
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you earlier, but what I wanted to say is what you asked us, we have completed and we have done.
Okay.
And we also have a value of that property, an estimated value from a company that is registered to know exactly what that value of that property is. I have it right in front of me. Be happy to submit it to you.
Thank you, Dr. Udine.
Yes,
I-
ma'am.
I think just to the sponsor of the bill and to the chair of the committee, but also you have we were talking about the easement earlier on the property, and now we're
Yes,
looking
ma'am.
to, are we also looking to extend the easement further off of or are we going to build another easement off of the Perez Brothers easement granting that they gave in the past? Are we going to extend that easement forward? Or are we
The
looking
easement
to
granted-
develop another easement?
The easement granted by Paris Brothers goes
Yes.
all the way down to the hatchery.
Right, so is there going to be an additional easement access, or are we going to, are we looking at closing down the Perez Brothers easement that was granted to the government, or are we going to keep that easement and extend it to another property elsewhere?
Topographically, that's the only easement that you could probably have because of the condition of the land.
Okay, so there's not going to be a back road easement for the hatchery, nothing of that such? We're going to maintain that easement?
Yes, it would have to be over a cliff for that eastman. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you,
Thank you,
Madam Chair.
Senator Nelson. Mr. Udine, on your survey map, then, how many acres are you proposing to add on?
Yeah. Sorry, 1.5.
1.5 acres?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Senator Shelton? Senator Munoz? All right. Senator San Augustine, would you like to close?
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, just amazing that, Madam Chair, that during the budget hearing of UOG, I asked specifically for that survey because I knew this bill was going to come up. And now you bring it up. Shame, shame, shame. That should have been brought up a lot earlier. That should have been turned in, and I expect that to be turned in real soon. Because I just wonder how much you're going to ask in the budget when we start finishing up the budget year. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Yes, we would consider this new map. That would be very helpful. Who did the survey, Mr. Udine?
Sure, and please, I'm not trying to put blame on anybody. We just got it this Thursday. So
Oh, okay then.
4 days
Because
ago.
we have a lot of maps that were attached
Sure.
to the bill, but none of them were consistent, in my
Absolutely.
opinion.
This is
so-
from Panea Surveying, Inc., P.O. Box
What's the name?
in Jigo, Guam. Yeah. Pineda, Pineda.
Okay, thank you very much. And if there's anything else you'd like to add? If not, Mr. Borja, if you could please just give us a list of adjacent landowners surrounding, even adjacent to the easement coming
Sure.
down. And,
We can do that.
oh, Mr. Udine, sorry, could you tell us what type of infrastructure you expect to be brought in there?
Well, it's
Or
really going to, sure, yes, ma'am. It's really going to rely on the partnership. We're going to allow, they're going to have to submit, obviously, to the university structures that they would like to either rebuild. Most of it has to be rebuilt. I don't think there's going to be any new additional property at this time or buildings at this time. But if I'm not sure the last time, Senator, you were down there, but most of the structures have deteriorated so bad. So most of the money right now will go in and either be torn down. They'll be either torn down and rebuilt or just better reconstructed. But Sorry, yes,
But the
ma'am.
one on the end,
The one on the
that's on
end,
the boundary, is not going to be rebuilt?
yes, ma'am, he'll have to be rebuilt as well.
So that is going to be torn down?
Listen, at this point in time, just probably strengthened rather than torn down.
All right. And what about, right now it has power and water coming down there?
Yes,
Is that
ma'am.
through the easement, do you know?
No, it's not through the easement. It actually goes through, it runs down that slope. It's been provided by, who first did it, I'm not sure, but it's something that we have actually spoken with Guam Power Authority. They have come in the last month and cleared some of the tree lines so that we have really good power source down there. They've been extremely helpful in helping us get constant power in that particular area. I just, if you don't mind, because I just want to make sure that everyone understands that we have done our diligence to make sure that what the Vice Speaker has asked and what you asked was done. We're sorry that we just got this in a couple of days
Appreciate
ago,
that.
but we went to, and we paid to get all this done, so there's actual points and assessment of that property and the value of that property as well.
All right. Could you just also then send me something after this hearing that confirms that how you get your power and water? Whose property that runs through it is what I'm curious about, or
Sure.
if there's an existing easement that brings it down there. Thank you. And I appreciate all your testimony, Madam President, Mr. Director, and Dean Udine. Thank you very much. So we will continue to accept testimony until June 21. There being no further testimony,
Madam Chair?
this bill is duly heard. Sidus Masi.
Madam Chair, I just have one question, perhaps for the chair, for you.
Sure.
The property, the government land where we saw the striations of the topographical view that shows a cliff line, this is government's land at the far northeast side. Can that be used as a quarry? And if that can be used as a quarry, does Chamorro Land Trust or DLM has the authorization to use that as a quarry? Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is Bill number 72-35. I'd like to ask those who've signed up to testify to please have a seat at the table. And again, thank my colleagues for being here. All right, if I may ask Senator Amanda Shelton, who's the sponsor of the bill, to introduce the bill.
Sidus Masi, Madam Chair, and thank you very much for hearing this bill today. Bill number 72-35 is an act to amend Section 3112B of Chapter 3, Title 7, Guam Code Annotated, and to add a new Section 3113 of Chapter 3, Title 7, Guam Code Annotated, establishing the Working Interdisciplinary Network of Guardian Stakeholders, WINGs, relative to the Office of the Public Guardian. The Office of the Public Guardian was created for the purpose of furnishing guardianship services to the elderly and those individuals who are mentally unable to make decisions for themselves. As part of the Office of the Public Guardian Review Board was established to consistently monitor appointed guardians. However, the only mandatory duty of the board was to review the care and protection of those persons under guardianship by the public guardian every 6 months. The board was to consist of 11 appointed members that often were not appointed and that made it difficult to have a quorum. The duties of the board were too narrow and the size of the board too large to be effective. In 2011, the National Guardianship Network called for coordinated state court community partnerships called Working Interdisciplinary Networks of Guardianship Stakeholders, or WINGs, which are broad-based collaborative working groups that drive changes that will affect the ways courts and guardians practice and improve the lives of people who have or may need guardians. Bill 72-35 COR therefore abolishes the existing Public Guardianship Review Board and establishes a working interdisciplinary network of guardianship stakeholders, mirroring the national movement toward WINGS groups in other jurisdictions throughout the United States. The American Bar Association and the National Guardianship Network recommend adopting a working interdisciplinary network of guardianship stakeholders. This bill was introduced in collaboration with the public guardian and the judiciary, and this change in the guardianship board will provide more streamlined and effective support for our public guardian, who serves some of the most vulnerable members of our community. Sizuas Masi, Madam Chairperson, and I'd like to thank in advance those who have come to testify today.
Thank you very much, Senator Shelton. If I may call on Marceline Santos, our public guardian.
Thank you, Senator Terlaje. I've submitted written testimony, and I guess I'll just kind of summarize it and assume that you have it before you. But first of all, I'd like to First of all, I'd like to thank Senator Shelton for introducing this bill. And this bill does address Governor Lulian Guerrero's goal to eliminate, consolidate, and reduce the membership of dozens of boards and commissions to help streamline the government of Guam and improve its efficiency. And furthermore, as stated in the bill, rather than the narrow duties of the Public Guardian Review Board, WINGS is a broad-based collaborative working group that will drive changes in the way the courts and guardians practice in order to improve the lives of people who have or need guardians. And the genesis of this bill came from a grant that the judiciary received back in 2015. And the judiciary invited stakeholders to give input and recommendations regarding the mission and goals of WINGS on Guam. And some of the stakeholders who were actively involved included the Adult Guardianship Court, the Guam Bar Association, the Department of Public Health and Social Services, Division of Senior Citizens, and the Bureau of Adult Protective Services, all of which are here today, and Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center, Guam Memorial Hospital and the Skilled Nursing Center, the Department of Integrated Services for Individuals with Disabilities, the Guam Legal Services Corporation, Catholic Social Services, and Gumamami. And as part of that activity in establishing the mission and goals of WINGS on Guam, the primary goal that was identified by those participants was the need to train guardians. And so we developed a PowerPoint and previewed it with the participants and got feedback. And eventually we believed we had the basic training PowerPoint presentation. And then the Honorable Elise M. Iriarte, the assigned judge to the Adult Guardianship Court as of January of 2018, began to order newly appointed guardians to attend the training administered by the Judicial Education Center. Since I was on extended leave last summer, the former public guardian, John Weisenberger, graciously agreed to conduct the initial trainings from July through October of 2018. The trainings have been well received and appreciated by the guardians who have attended over the past year. There are also plans to incorporate some of the feedback from the attendees, as well as the additional expectation by the Adult Guardianship Court for the development of a guardianship plan consistent with the National Probate Court standards. This training for guardians is just the first of many effective practices that WINGS will promote and implement in the best interest of the guardians and their wards. And then I refer to the amended section for 3112B and suggest that the proposed section 3113 can just be an extension of that amended section 3112B. And the reason there was a proposed 3113 was we had listed the the functions and duties of wings, and which was fundamentally what we would have in a bylaws. And so with the input of Senator Shelton, those that bylaw language was eliminated, and it will be up to the judiciary to draft and adopt the bylaws rather than codifying it. And then the Office of the Public Guardian has been in existence since 2001, and I have been the Public Guardian since July of 2009. It is my belief that WINGS can and will provide meaningful input and assistance to the Office of the Public Guardian and the judiciary, as well as my successor, hopefully in the near future. And the need for guardians is increasing as my generation of baby boomers age and become infirmed. For guardians of younger wards, the implementation of Guam Able Savings Programs that was enacted in December 2018 under Public Law 34-144 is critical for the long-term planning by guardians of those younger wards. Financial exploitation of the Manumku is rampant on Guam, and the full force and effect of the law must come to bear on those offenders. The program and services available on Guam for guardians and wards are limited and or difficult to navigate. Therefore, programs and services need to be expanded and to be accessible. For example, St. Dominic's is the only senior care facility on Guam, and its operation is jeopardized by the current application of MIP regulations by the Department of Public Health and Social Services. The census at St. Dominic's is just about 2/3 capacity, while many patients for that level of care occupy beds at Guam Memorial Hospital or the skilled nursing unit. Rather than the belated implementation of laws and regulations impacting nursing home care, those laws and regulations must be amended. There is much to do, and WINGS will be the engine for that change and improvement. On behalf of the Office of the Public Guardian and the private guardians, Dunkaluna Sudus Masi.
Thank you, Attorney Santos. Mr. Director San Augustine?
Senior Citizens Administrator, ma'am. Senior
Oh,
Citizens
Senior
Administrator.
Citizens Administrator.
Yes, ma'am.
The Division of Senior
Senior
Citizens.
Citizens,
Can you
yes.
also introduce your team here? They're from Adult Protective Services?
Sure, that'd be great. Thank you. Chairperson Therese Terlaje, Senator Therese Terlaje, Committee on Health, Tourism, Historic Preservation, Land and Justice, and members of your committee. Vice Speaker Nelson, Senator Sonoxine, Senator Shelton, and Senator Munya. Along with me today, I have Program Coordinator Charlene Siniclas, and she oversees the Bureau of Program Administration and Development. And also, I have the Acting Social Service Supervisor for the Bureau of Adult Protective Services with me, Mr. William Regis. And they're behind me as well. So, Madam Chair, Committee, members of the Committee on Health, Tourism, Historic Preservation, Land and Justice. The following is provided in response to Bill 72-35, which in essence really is looking at establishing and institutionalizing the working interdisciplinary network of guardian stakeholders, WINGS, relative to the Office of the Public Guardian. The Division of Senior Citizens is in full support of the proposed measure as it is a means to improve the adult guardianship on Guam. Through the enactment of this bill, it fortifies the establishment of WINGS on Guam as it provides the framework for guardians to be aware of their responsibility beyond what many take on, and that is to help care for someone they love without much thought to their role in the management of their ward's financial affairs. This aspect, to step in or to step up, to care for someone we love, perhaps our own mother, is rich in our culture and a practice we want to perpetuate. And we're taking on the role of being a guardian, to be responsible for the care of someone we care for so dearly, comes the legal implications of having a fiduciary responsibility and obligation to the person they are the guardian over. The WINGS training raises the level of awareness and connectedness of the role of guardians beyond caring for their wards' medical and daily needs, i.e. food, and to also recognize they are now also charged with the accounting of their wards' finances. All these aspects, which is not an inclusive and comprehensive list, is important and necessary in being a guardian, and yet many guardians may not be aware of what their role as a guardian fully entails. The effort to improve the role of guardians and to provide the education and legal implications that come with being a guardian are components of the WINGS training program that will better equip guardians to be confident and aware of their responsibilities. I echo the May 1st, 2019 statement of the Honorable Catherine A. Merriman, Chief Justice of Guam, in her 2019 State of the Judiciary Address. This effort ensures that all guardians, whether court-appointed or private, are provided with the training, resources, and support to better care for the elderly and vulnerable. By raising awareness of the pitfalls of the guardian-ward relationship, we hope to help reduce the incidence of abuse among the elderly and infirm." End of quote. From the perspective of the Bureau of Adult Protective Services Bureau, who oversees the investigations of abuse against our elders, age 60 and older, and adults with a disability, age 18 to 59, the Bureau supports this bill as it provides for training and education, part of the intervention efforts to educate our community by raising their level of awareness of the potential pitfalls of abuse against our elders and adults with a disability. Financial abuse has been on the top 2 types of abuse referred and investigated by the Bureau these past 5 years. In fiscal years 2018, 17, and 15, financial property exploitation was the #1 type of abuse referred and investigated. And in fiscal years 2016 and 14, this type of abuse was #2, also referred and investigated. The information simply states the presence of financial exploitation of our seniors and adults with a disability exists in our community. However, the information presented is not to be viewed as representing only guardians, or that all cases referred for financial property exploitation are of alleged abusers who are guardians. The information is provided to support the recognition of the existence of elder and adult abuse, and that as a community, we must and should put guardianship requirements forth. And as much as putting requirements forth, there is also the need to provide support through the WINGS program for the role of guardians to be understood, and for the guardians to be trained in their role as guardians, and for guardians to know they have standards to uphold, and just as important is knowing they will be provided support in their roles as guardians. The bill is fully supported as it puts a program in place with national standards that address the requirements for guardianship, provides the program to prepare and train guardians to meet the requirements to be a guardian, and is also looking at the future to support policy initiatives for the enhancement of guardianship and related infrastructure. Therefore, the Bureau of Adult Protective Services, Division of Senior Citizens of this department, Public Health and Social Service, as a vested stakeholder of the WINGS, is prepared to serve in an official capacity to support its implementation. As a core to the WINGS program to improve the system of being a guardian that would also serve as an investigative mechanism to prove or disprove financial exploitation of seniors and adults with disabilities by the appointed guardian. And given there being no fiscal impact requiring an increase in the annual budget of the Division of Senior Citizens, we fully support the passage of Bill 72-35. Sinceramente, Arthur San Augustine, Senior Citizens, Public Health and Social Services.
Thank you, Mr. San Augustine.
Thank you.
All right, if I may ask Senator Shelton. Vice Speaker Nelson? Senator San Augustine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to just express my support for Bill 72-35. And I like what you wrote down, or you have presented, Mr. San Augustine, Primo. The role of the guardians to be understood, and for guardians to be trained in their role as guardians. And for guardians to know they have standards to uphold. And just as important is knowing they will be provided support in their roles as guardians. Place national standards that address the requirements for guardianship. Provide the programs to prepare and train guardians to meet the requirements to be a guardian. That says a lot, because the threat of our elders is that we are both at that age ready, Primo. So we want to make sure that we don't get threatened, but I'd say that jokingly, but seriously, there may be occasions out there, and you have that on record, and the bill puts that in place and protects our manamko. Okay? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. I think I'd like to commend both of your agencies for doing a very good job. I mean, I think we only hear good things about the Public Guardian's Office and Adult Protective Services. I think we were just talking about them in another recent hearing and following up on the number of referrals, for example, for financial exploitation, and they receive a lot of referrals, and I was trying to follow up on how many of those referrals are really getting to the AG's office, and it looks like there's a gap there. So, but I'm just bringing that up because we're talking about all other kinds of issues, but I wanted to really the bill sounds great. It's creating a program that's going to create interdisciplinary teams, and everyone's going to help to get guardians more informed and able to do their jobs. I guess I just want to know, I believe APS has already mandated to do this when they have referrals and they're dealing on a case. They already have authority to get an interdisciplinary or intergovernment team together, and even GPD. You're able to call them, and you're supposed to be able to have those resources available. So I hope we don't let that go, because you need it on your end to get to full determination. And I know that the Public Guardian's Office also does that. In order to be as effective as you have been, I know that you have had to do that yourself. That's one of your strengths, I think, is that you've been able to pull these resources together, and all the agencies, at least in the government, to help with the case that you might have before you. What I don't understand is, I guess, the only two requirements of the board that we will be repealing were to monitor the public guardian and something else.
Well, it was to monitor all guardians, I believe.
All
only
guardians
duty
and the
only-
public guardian.
Right, right.
Right. But this bill doesn't put that as another duty of this WINGS board. So in effect, is that not necessary anymore to monitor them?
Well, Your Honor, at least, I think the first thing I have to say is that the Public Guardian Review Board did have the authority to monitor all guardians, but their only mandated duty was every 6 months to review the circumstances of wards within the Office of the Public Guardian. And it was a large board of about 11 people that needed to be appointed, and they were people at the highest echelons of each of those agencies that did not have time to attend, and much less have time to go and do home visits and such. And the Office of the Public Guardian, there is probably not a single ward that we deal with independently. We either are working with Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center, Catholic Social Services, Guma Mami, Department of Public Health and Social Services with regard to their benefits, or the Social Security Administration or the VA. And so it's not as though my office shouldn't be monitored, it just wasn't happening anyways. And the difference between that board and even the multidisciplinary team that's in the statute for Adult Protective Services is those are on a case-by-case basis. I think the purpose of WINGS is to have a bigger picture view of what needs to be done. And for example, just the belief that training needed to happen, that was easy enough to design and implement, but there are a lot of other things that as a group that WINGS needs to work together to get them things done. For example, there probably should be at one point in time a group that will monitor guardians, including the Office of the Public Guardian. But again, what happens because what happens with the training, or it's almost like what happens at parent-teacher conferences only the parents of the really good kids usually show up, and you don't really need to talk to them. You need to talk to the parents that don't show up. And so it's having that outreach to make sure that we're reaching everybody out there in the community. And much of the time, the financial exploitation doesn't really happen by the guardian because they don't have a guardian as yet. And so therefore, the court's not overseeing the management of that person managing the Menumco's money. And so, that's when there probably does need to be a guardian, and I've often been called in to become the guardian for those people who have been exploited and to try and stabilize their finances. And so I understand the need, the concern that there probably still does need to be monitoring, but the way it was structured in the old law is, again, broad in the one sense, but in practice very narrow. And I'm hoping that the the wings will be able to address a lot of the issues that are facing guardians, because I know that by myself, it's almost like, battling windmills. It's very difficult for me to be heard with regard to what's happening at St. Dominic's right now, that impacts Guam Memorial Hospital and the Skilled Nursing Center. But I think when you have a group of agencies working together, then there isn't a mechanism for better planning and programs.
That's, I guess, what I want to get to is, so this is right now you have a board that should be the highest echelons of these agencies, public health, and you have issues at public health with how you said they're implementing MIP or
Right, Your Honor.
something like that. MIP
Right,
regulations. You're talking about Guam Memorial Hospital and their laws and regulations, and the nursing home care regulations. These are all government, and you're supposed to have access to these top notch. But how do you see the wings to be different then? Who are you going to bring in? Because they're not listed in the bill.
Well, because that was going to be in the bylaw section. Those people from those higher echelons, their duties on the Public Guardian Review Board wasn't to discuss those kinds of issues. It was very specific to monitoring the wards rather than
So are you envisioning there would be monthly meetings of people from government agencies? Are we going to make another list of government agencies who are going to be meeting to help you to, for example, lobby regarding the MIP issues? I mean, I think you've been very effective with these things. That's why I guess I'm surprised. You, by yourself, and with the court's assistance, because you're under the court, has been able to implement things that have been outstanding, perhaps, that we could argue the Department of Public Health could have also implemented. For example, the training for guardians and all this education and outreach. So I guess I just want to know, what are we mandating? So who are you going to get that's different from what this list shows?
Well, the list on the Public Guardian Review Board were appointed again, but to have a director of public health and social services do a home visit. Yes, they could send out a substitute, but again, having these people go out and do the home visits and write reports and it's just was an expectation that I don't think was ever done, and we had a hard enough time even just getting a quorum together for a Public Guardian Review
I understand the quorum issue with the old board, but I'm trying to find out, what is your new board going to do that, I mean, you're expecting your new board to go out and make home visits?
No, no. That's exactly the point. We're going to expect them to function kind of the same way we did when we we were meeting with regard to the mission and goals for Wings on Guam, is you have a group of people who come together and from their experience with regard to the elderly and the disabled adults, express their concerns, especially as it relates to guardianship. And so that's how come the training program was like one of the things that everybody expressed was a need, and we were able to get that together. And it's my view that similar sessions and input can occur. I mean, I
agree, but
yeah.
so just to clarify again, you were able to do that without any legislation in place, and that's a function of you and the judiciary working together, perhaps public health. I'm not sure who was on your team that you were working together for the training, but I'm saying
I listed them. I listed them in my
okay,
letter.
so
those
yes,
people
all right, great.
Were actively involved.
All right.
And so, and again, they sent like social workers from Guam Memorial Hospital.
That's great.
Rather than, but the Public Guardian Review Board, as it was written before, expected administrators.
All right.
And who weren't.
So repeal of the
freedom.
Public Guardian Review Board, you don't want that. You don't want that in the statute. You wanted to show that we've repealed a board that's not meeting. But this Wings new group, do we have to put that in statute? Because the bill's not requiring that. It's just saying we're allowing, it's kind of like we're allowing the courts to do this, but they've already done this. You have already done this, and you're effectively doing it. That's why I'm confused, because it doesn't list who the members are going to be. It doesn't really list what their duties are going to be. And so I'm wondering, and you've been able to do it already, and so I want to know exactly, what is mandate, what are you asking us to mandate?
I now understand your question is I guess there was the belief that in repealing the Public Guardian Review Board, we should have a substitute. But you're suggesting that that's not absolutely necessary.
I'm wondering in the other Wings programs, this is a program that's been done across the other states. Do they?
It's not been codified.
I see.
Yeah.
That was one of my questions. Yeah. All right. And there's no power that you don't have that you need, is there? Either of you? I'm just making sure. Currently, because
no.
I like I said,
it just kind of mandates, because I could tell you I've asked for meetings even with directors and I don't get them.
Okay.
And
I can see how that would help.
With regard to this specific issue, yeah.
I think
I've called in January and asked to meet with the directors of some of the relevant agencies that I interface with, and I called twice, and I called 3 times and never got a call back. So, this probably does help me to be able to address some of these issues, because
sure.
People attribute more power to me than I have.
Well, the other thing is, in the other states, I think the public guardian is not at the court. So it was a partnership between courts and public guardians to make the public guardians really have that authority of the court behind them. But I think in your case, maybe we've already, somebody had the foresight to do that. But I'm commending you. Can I just ask the details of these 2 things that you brought up? What is the issue with the MIP? How is that jeopardizing?
Okay, so
St. Dominic's?
MIP has had rules and regulations as well as the law with regard to St. Dominic's, and St. Dominic's at that point in time, or what they envisioned, not St. Dominic's specifically, but MIP was going to fund the care of people at an intermediate care facility, not a nursing home. Nevertheless, St. Dominic's became in existence, and since the 80s through 2018, people on MIP mostly went up to St. Dominic's, and MIP paid for their stay at St. Dominic's. Then somebody finally read the regulations to realize that no, it isn't nursing home care level, it's intermediate care level. And so therefore, that was all of the hoopla that happened last April, because when public health went up to St. Dominic's, the news said that these people weren't eligible for St. Dominic's, and it was kind of like, well, who is eligible for St. Dominic's? And it was because the charts for these individual patients didn't have as many entries as you would think for an intermediate care facility. You know, maybe it's consistent with a nursing care facility, but it wasn't for an intermediate care facility. So what's happening is, in 2018, only 2 new patients were admitted to St. Dominic's, and they were mine. And so you have 37 patients up there now for a 60-bed facility.
Okay.
And you have people sitting at Guam Memorial Hospital and SNU who before would have been taken into St. Dominic's readily because their income level would have made them eligible for MIP coverage.
And they don't necessarily need the skilled nursing, and we could clear those beds up.
Right, and so because, right, is public health is now telling Sister, or that's what she told me this morning, that you know some of the applicants for St. Dominic's don't meet the criteria
Of intermediate care.
Intermediate care.
All right.
When that's kind of you know, St. Dominic's has always been and still really is a nursing home.
All right. Mr. San Augustine, have you been following up with this issue if it's a public health issue? I mean, a Department of Public Health issue?
We've been apprised of the situation, but this program does fall under the Division of Public Welfare, and so the coverage there is based on the Division of Public Welfare's assessment of the law that the public guardian, Mrs. Marcy Sanchez, has expressed earlier.
Could you please follow up for us
Okay.
and whether that's a permanent decision or whether that's something that they're looking at, or if there's any flexibility, or if they're recommending a change to some rule or reg that we could facilitate for them or anything like that, please, because this is, the second round now that we're hearing about this kind of issue.
It's
Yes.
duly noted, Senator.
Thank you very much. Thank you to both of you. Thank you to all of you. Senator Shelton, would you like to close?
Sudesh Masi, Madam Chair, and to both of you today for being here to testify in support of this bill. This is something that I hope we will move forward to so we can better support our guardians and our vulnerable populations here on island. And I think what this bill really tries to do is to bring continuity to whoever will be taking over your role in the future. So we know that you, Marcy, are doing an excellent job at keeping everybody accountable and really following out your mandates, and you as well, Art. But someday down the line, it might be a new person, and we want to keep all these agencies working together so that we can provide the best care and services from our government. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
If there are no other people to give testimony, I will accept testimony until June 21. And you can submit the testimonies to my office at the Ada Plaza Center, Suite 207, 173 Aspinall Avenue, Hagåtña 96910, or to the mailroom at the Guam Legislature in the Guam Congress Building, or through email at senatorterlajeguam@gmail.com. This public hearing is now adjourned. The time is 2:35.